explosive and revolutionary information when it comes to men and their perceptions of women in the workplace. While women have made modest gains, the new book, The Male Factor, gives us information on how men believe women are unintentionally undermining themselves in the workplace. Here with us this morning, the author of this provocative new book, Shaunti Feldhahn. The book is called The Male Factor, The Unwritten Rules, Misperceptions, and Secret Beliefs of Men in the Workplace. And let's get right to it, Shaunti. What are women doing to unintentionally undermine themselves?
Well, it's basically like, it's essentially the not understanding that men have a lot of private thoughts that they don't necessarily say.
Right.
And a lot of unwritten expectations. I actually came from Wall Street. I used to work on Wall Street and worked with a lot of Japanese bankers.
Okay.
You know, and you know when you're going to work in a foreign culture, you got to do a little work to understand how what you're doing and saying is being perceived. It's the same thing with us as women. We can be so much more effective. This is what all these guys were telling me privately. If we understand how what we're doing and saying is being perceived by the men around us.
Right. Now, you did some extensive research, and you got men to be remarkably honest because they were anonymous.
Yes.
But this was information that we really did need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I basically spent the last 8 years interviewing and surveying 3,000 men. And I mean, anywhere I went, any business meeting I was in, anytime I took a trip to speak in another city, I'd go interview men there. Heaven help the poor man stuck next to me on the airplane for 2 hours. You know, I basically picked the brains of every guy I came across.
Right. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about emotions, because you've got a whole chapter dedicated to crying, and men have no idea what to do when a woman cries in the workplace.
Yeah.
But first of all, what women think. Men are uncomfortable with emotions because crying is inappropriate and unprofessional. Men think getting emotional includes far more than fighting back tears, and it's not just unprofessional. It means all logic has ceased, and that scares us.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually fascinated when I did the research behind why this is. Men's brains and women's brains are wired to process emotion completely differently. And we as women actually have this kind of dual processing thing going on where we can process a lot of emotions and actually be thinking clearly at the same time. Men's brains aren't wired that same way, so they have to shut down all emotion. They know when they're getting emotional, they're not thinking clearly. They look at you as a woman and they see you getting emotional, they assume you're not thinking clearly either. So what the men were telling me is, you know, my female colleague got defensive in this meeting, we were criticized by this other team, and so I couldn't trust your judgment of the whole meeting.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, we have to know that these perceptions are out there. Don't have to agree with them.
Right.
We have to know they're there.
And you say that in the book. You're not saying the assumptions are right or that women have to change, but you need to be aware.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why the subtitle of The Male Factor is The Unwritten Rules and Misperceptions of Men in the Workplace. But you know what? Once we know that those perceptions are out there, we can go, okay, I bet you he thinks that logic has ceased. So you know what, Mark? I'm really passionate about this. But, you know, I think really this is why we need to do A, B, and C. You're just proving logic has not ceased. You need to know that you need to do that. Right.
But don't these misperceptions come from our fear of not being politically correct?
Oh, absolutely. At least in one case, the fear of not wanting to talk about them. This is the reason I had to guarantee every man anonymity to get this candid perception from them. And you know, the thing that I realized is these, whether or not we like them, and we may completely disagree with them, it is really critical to know these are things that men are thinking but feel they cannot talk about because of political correctness. And once we know that, you know what? We can be so much more effective and remove obstacles we didn't even know were there.
Yeah, let's go back to one more. What women think. When I wear a trendy low-cut blouse or short skirt, I enjoy feeling attractive and confident and feel good about myself. Men think, wow, she wants me to look at her body and fantasize about it. I mean, we are on two different ends of the spectrum here.
Completely different. Yeah, this is one of those areas that, again, it's part of the biological wiring in the brain that we women don't have quite that same kind of wiring. And so we just want to feel good about ourselves and have no idea that choice to wear that low-cut top often will kick the male brain into a sort of a sexual part of his brain he doesn't want to be in. And the whole time you're sitting up there at the whiteboard giving the presentation, he's going, look at her face, look at her face, look at her face. And he's not hearing everything that she's saying. Most women, once we know that, we're like, oh, wow, okay, we'll just slightly adjust what we're wearing.
But you talk about how it can even be simple conversation. How was your weekend? Oh, now we're invading
Yes.
her personal privacy,
Yeah.
and we're getting into an area we may not want to be in.
Men definitely have this, okay, we've got to segregate personal over here and work over here, and it's actually uncomfortable
It is.
for a man to try to go back and forth. So when the woman says, how was your weekend? The guy's like, fine, you know,
Right.
and it kicks him into a part of his brain that is a little bit difficult for him to come back from. And if that happens a lot, we think we're trying to build relationships, but the guy, unfortunately, is basically thinking she's just not quite as professional.
Right. And you stay away from advice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically knowledge.
Right.
Every woman is going to choose to apply these things in different way, but we have to have the knowledge.
Yeah, required reading for men and women.
I think so. I hope so.
Because, you know, I'm reading through this thinking, oh my gosh, I do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And you
it makes
probably
you take
didn't
a good
know
right.
that was what women didn't know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So great stuff. Shaunti, congratulations.
Thanks so much, Mark.
You're welcome. And Shaunti's look at communication in the workplace, The Male Factor, is in stores now, and you can log on to myfoxatlanta.com and click on the Good Day tab for more information.